that has shocked political analysts, military observers, and global strategists alike. A dramatic turn of events is unfolding in Eastern Europe as reports emerge that Belarusian troops have openly disobeyed orders coming from the Kremlin. This is not just a small disagreement or a tactical delay. This is a serious and unprecedented act of defiance that carries huge implications for the region, for Moscow, for Minsk, and for the broader international landscape. For years, Belarus has been seen as one of Russia's closest allies, a dependable partner that consistently supported Moscow's decisions, especially under the leadership of Alexander Lukashenko. But now, something has shifted, and that shift is sending shockwaves through Moscow's political circles. At the center of this growing crisis is the long-standing pressure the Kremlin has placed on Belarus to deepen its military involvement in Russia's broader strategic objectives. While Belarus has allowed the stationing of Russian forces, opened its territory for operations, and repeatedly echoed Kremlin narratives, its own armed forces have never been fully enthusiastic about being dragged into conflicts that do not directly serve the interests of Belarus itself. Over time, this hesitation has quietly grown into frustration, then into silent resistance, and now it appears to have escalated into outright refusal. Troops who were once expected to follow orders without question are reportedly breaking ranks, refusing deployments, and pushing back against directives originating from Moscow rather than their own command structure. This development is more than just a military issue. It symbolizes a possible fracture in what has long been considered a tightly controlled alliance. For Moscow, the reliability of Belarus has been a cornerstone of its regional strategy. Losing that reliability could reshape everything, from defensive planning to regional influence operations. For Belarus, this is perhaps a moment of internal awakening, where its own soldiers begin to realize that their loyalty is to their homeland first, not to the political pressures exerted by an ally whose interests may not align with theirs. This emerging divide creates political tension not only within Belarusian leadership, but also within the Kremlin, which now must question how far it can push a partner without causing rupture. Understanding the roots of this disobedience requires looking back at the mounting dissatisfaction within Belarus military ranks. For months, there have been reports of low morale, disagreements over the purpose of deployments, and concerns about being forced into conflicts that carry huge risks with little gain. Belarusian soldiers, many of whom see themselves as defenders of their own borders rather than instruments of foreign strategy, have apparently reached a breaking point. Orders from Moscow, orders that reportedly demanded aggressive military posturing and heightened readiness, were met with reluctance and eventually with refusal. This refusal is seen by some analysts as a symbolic act, almost a declaration that Belarus armed forces do not want to be used as pawns in geopolitical maneuvering. From Moscow's perspective, this act of defiance poses a serious challenge. The Kremlin has invested heavily in shaping Belarus into a compliant, loyal state that bolsters its influence and military reach. Any sign of rebellion, especially from within the armed forces, threatens that vision. Russian officials are reportedly scrambling to understand the cause of the disobedience, worried about whether this is an isolated event or the beginning of a broader trend. If troops are willing to disobey in one instance, what stops similar incidents from escalating? Could entire units refuse deployment? Could officers begin questioning directives that come indirectly from Moscow? These questions are ringing loudly in Russian political and security circles. Internationally, the news has sparked concern among European nations, NATO allies, and global observers who closely monitor the fragile security dynamics of the region. The alliance between Russia and Belarus has long been considered a potential flashpoint, especially given the strategic geography and the history of political tension, any instability within that alliance, even a small crack, can have ripple effects. Countries bordering Belarus are already assessing whether this shift could lead to greater unpredictability along their borders. Meanwhile, global conflict analysts warn that unpredictable behavior from Belarus, whether cooperative or resistant, could complicate diplomatic efforts aimed at maintaining stability in Eastern Europe. Within Belarus, this development raises significant political questions. How will President Lukashenko respond? For years, he has carefully balanced his rule by leveraging support from Moscow while maintaining enough domestic control to avoid appearing like a mere puppet state. But now, with soldiers defying orders tied to Kremlin expectations, Lukashenko may be forced into a difficult position. Does he punish the soldiers and risk internal backlash? Does he side with them and risk angering Russia? Each choice carries enormous consequences for the future of his leadership. And for the soldiers themselves, this act of resistance may be motivated not only by politics, but by a sense of national identity, an identity that seems to be growing stronger as external pressures increase. Another important aspect to consider is the long-term effect on Belarus military itself. Armies function on discipline, hierarchy, and unity of command. When troops break ranks, it creates uncertainty within the entire institution. Officers now face the challenge of maintaining cohesion while navigating a politically sensitive environment. Rank-and-file soldiers may feel emboldened by the actions of their peers, leading to broader questioning of orders that seem to serve foreign interests rather than national security. This internal shift could transform the character of Belarus military and possibly redefine its role within the country's geopolitical strategy. As the world watches these developments unfold, analysts are debating whether this moment marks the beginning of a deeper split between Russia and Belarus, or whether it is simply a temporary flare-up that will be managed behind closed doors. Some believe that Belarus may be gradually distancing itself from full dependency on Russia, seeking to regain some degree of autonomy. Others argue that Lukashenko will ultimately do whatever is necessary to restore order and maintain the alliance, especially considering the economic and political support Moscow provides. But one thing is certain: the loyalty of Belarus troops can no longer be taken for granted. This event also highlights the growing tension between political leadership and military sentiment in various regions across the world. As global conflicts intensify and alliances become more complicated, soldiers are increasingly finding themselves caught between national interests and political expectations. The situation in Belarus may become a case study for how military institutions respond when pushed too far by external pressures. And for the Kremlin, this is a stark reminder that influence does not guarantee obedience, and alliances built on coercion or dependency are inherently unstable. In the coming days, more details will emerge about the scale of the disobedience and how both governments choose to respond. Will Moscow attempt to exert more pressure? Will Minsk try to downplay the event? Will the soldiers face punishment, or will their actions inspire broader resistance within the ranks? These are the questions shaping the world's attention as tensions simmer and uncertainty grows. For now, the only clear takeaway is that something fundamental has shifted in the relationship between Belarus and Russia, and that shift could have far-reaching consequences. As we continue to monitor this escalating situation, the global community remains on edge. The balance of power in Eastern Europe is fragile, and any disruption, especially one involving military defiance, can quickly escalate into larger conflicts or political realignments. This moment marked by Belarusian troops refusing Kremlin orders, may prove to be a turning point, and its impact will be felt far beyond Minsk and Moscow. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned as we follow this development.